Welcome back to HOA SOS. Lee, it's good to see you, man. We actually haven't been around each other that much, and we were in this studio. We were really discussing COVID things, and then we both kind of had to take a break. I had a health issue. You've been really busy, but it's good to be back in the studio with you, man.
I feel fantastic. I mean, the sun is out, shining, it's warm, and we're able to get out of the house.
Yeah, Phil's...
I get to see your face. You're looking good. I don't get to say that often. Well,
that's good. I don't mean to return the compliment with a dig, but one thing I've enjoyed about COVID is wearing the mask. I insist that we keep wearing them at the office from now on. It's helped me. I'm completely kidding. Anybody that knows Lee, seeing him right now, in the time since we were last in the studio, he's dropped an amazing amount of weight. You look phenomenal, bro. You look incredible.
I feel good.
You know, Lee went through a really scary health issue when we opened our firm, and I think weight is something they felt would really help with the heart issue, and I'm really proud of you. Your energy is through the roof. It's inspiring me to really get the weight off, but it's good to be back in the studio with you. So, all right, Mayday. What's our hot topic today? We started this podcast to deal with complicated, heated, difficult issues that are out there in the community. And today we got a great one that is a post-COVID issue. It has to do with pools, whether to open them or keep them closed. So Lee, just a few days ago, got a call from a longtime client, community manager, who is the client, his company, and the community he manages. They thought about opening their pool, but they ran a lot of numbers. They did the financial look at it, decided to keep it closed, and one group of owners has really pursued the manager. They've gone to the media. They say it's not fair. They're not utilizing their money. So I thought we should maybe, kind of debate this a little bit.
You know that there's always a bully at pools. There's always one. And this year we had the coronavirus that became the bully. And now we're dealing with bullying swimmers.
Open my pool!
I guess you just can't get rid of it. All right, well, why don't we dive into this thing? I'm going to start sometimes you and I do a point, counterpoint, and I think this is a good one to do it. So I think the argument that was coming across from the call we got on the May Day was that the homeowner group said, look, we pay dues. One of the big amenities we pay dues for is the pool. And you can meet all the requirements that the state wants. What are those requirements, and what's your comeback to the pool should just open because I pay my dues?
Well, the state just started allowing pools to open. But there's risk to everything. You have to, under the state guidelines, the pool should not have more than 50% of its capacity. And
as far as people?
As far as people allowed.
Gotcha.
And no more than 50, so whichever's less. You also have to clean and disinfect the equipment at the pool, the chairs, tables, etc., every hour.
Yeah, I thought I read that you got to do it every hour.
Right. And if you have a clubhouse, you have to keep the toilets, you have to keep the bathrooms and the showers open. You can close everything, or you're supposed to close the rest, so there's no congregating in that area. And there's additional other rules, but just those alone, think of the expense.
But that's what my money goes to if I'm an owner, doesn't it?
Well,
I mean, isn't that one of the big amenities I'm paying for? I want to be able to use the things that are recreationally available to me. I moved to the community for that pool.
Right. These weren't this was not an expense these weren't expenses that were anticipated when the budget was adopted last year, which is what the assessments are based on. Further, you have to take into the health concerns and whether the association can actually has the personnel, has the wherewithal to hire somebody to deal with the cleanup and to make sure that owners are doing what they need to do to make sure that the risk of the coronavirus spreading doesn't increase.
But wouldn't you agree with me that life's starting to reopen? Restaurants, we know, are there. They're following their parameters. So you just mentioned what the parameters are. Why can't my HOA find a volunteer or even pay for somebody to do those things so that they can open just like a restaurant can under those, restrictions and parameters?
Well, first, again, when it comes to the cleanup, the maintenance, etc., should probably be done by somebody who's familiar and is qualified to do that, to make sure that it's done on the hour, and having somebody, whether an association or a manager employee or a third-party vendor, having somebody there every hour becomes extremely expensive. Likely would result in special assessments, and it doesn't guarantee that the virus isn't going to occur and spread in the community. These are just regulations and guidelines as to how to try to minimize exposure. One other part of this regulation is that only family members can be close to each other. Anybody else has to be 6 feet away from each other. So if you have a pool that has half capacity present, it's going to be difficult to open that pool up to a large number of people when you take the 6-foot rule into effect. And then you're going to have to close the pool, you're likely going to have to close the pool every hour, clean it, and then reopen it later, and then do it again.
All right. Well, I'm going to set aside my debate with you for a second, bring up maybe a sub-component of this. So one thing you and I talk a lot about is board members having a fiduciary duty to the membership, meaning got to do the right thing, got to look at the budget, make sure things are managed, even though they're volunteers, they got to do that. How do you see that duty here with an association's budget versus some of these health concerns? How do you weigh that when you are confronted with the idea that maybe you should open the pool, but maybe you shouldn't open it?
Yeah, the association cannot just cater to one person on either side. They have to take into account, the board members have fiduciary duties they have to follow. Act in good faith, act as a person in a similar position would act, and act as they believe is in the best interest of the association and the community. And taking into account all of that, I believe what would help board members to make this decision is consult with specialists, consult with a pool specialist, see if the chlorine and other chemicals that are being used is appropriate, follows proper guidelines right now, and is likely to minimize or kill COVID-19.
Okay.
You have to understand that this is also not just going to apply to pools. It applies to other recreational facilities as well in a community. So a playground, basketball court, things like that, they have to be cleaned and sanitized, etc. So the expense would go to that equipment as well, which continues to increase as the association's obligations.
Well, sticking with pools, the mediator in me wants to ask you, what do you think about in a community where there's conflict about it, holding a specific board meeting where that's the topic and facilitated discussion about it, whiteboard the expense, whiteboard the risk so that everybody can weigh in? Does it make any sense to do something like that?
I'm always for either having a committee or presenting something like that to the membership, see if the membership is willing to take on the additional expense, because it likely would have to come through some kind of special assessment or taken from some other important aspect of the budget.
But if you have a forum, even if it's by Zoom, doesn't it kind of get people educated on both sides of the issue so that there's no confusion about it?
First of all, having a meeting with everybody in the community is difficult now,
Sure.
even by Zoom. Some people may not have computers, some people may not be able to log in, etc. So it becomes an issue, and having a meeting in person becomes a problem with the social distancing guidelines that we have.
Sure.
So, but putting it out to the community in some fashion to get feedback is a very good idea, but ultimately the burden and the risk falls on the association and the individual board members. The board members, as I said, have their fiduciary duties, which means if they make a decision on behalf of the association, they're at risk with regard to owners that are not happy with that decision. And so the liability could fall on them.
All right, I got you. So at the end of the day, communities are just going to have to look at it from the lens of what their budget is, if they can handle it, versus the risks.
And what's ultimately in the best interest of the association and the community.
All right, good deal. That's a wrap.